Hello, my name is Thomas, and as you might be able to tell, I am British. In fact, I was largely schooled here in the UK, and despite that, I was taught very, very little about the British Empire. It's not very much covered in our schools, but I had an interest growing up because, after all, my father was born in Kuala Lumpur, my grandfather was born in then British India, his parents worked in India for a good long time, and Hong Kong. And as an adult, I've lived and worked abroad in former British colonies such as, Cyprus, and I also worked in Shenzhen, very close to Hong Kong, and I know Hong Kong pretty well. So I've got a great curiosity about the British Empire. It isn't in my schooling, so I've looked for very good books on the British Empire. So here I'm going to talk about my top 5 books on the Empire. My favourite book on the British Empire is this, The Rise and Fall of the British Empire by Lawrence James. It is a pretty hefty book, I realise that, but it's not an arduous book. It is in fact an extremely accessible book, and if you like a commuter book, you like something to read for 20 minutes, half an hour on the tube or something like that, this is the perfect book for you. The way it's written, chapter by chapter, subsection by subsection, it's an extremely accessible book, and it just tells the facts. And I really like that. It is a very, very factual narrative of how the empire was built all around the globe. And it covers a period of about 500 years. It is a very comprehensive book. This is a book that I go back to again and again. As I say, it's a very, very factual book. It doesn't go into the rights or wrongs so much. It is simply telling you the facts. And that's something I really enjoy. It is my favourite book on the British Empire. My second favourite is this, Empire, How Britain Made the Modern World by Niall Ferguson. This is a much smaller book, it's about 20 years old now, and this really delves into rights and wrongs and how Britain made the modern world, as the subtitle suggests. Again, this is a very accessible book. This, I would say, is very good for, well, if you have a quiet week and you're able to belt through it all at once. It is divided up, and there has been a TV show made by, I think, PBS based on this. So there's a TV documentary available if you want it. But I found this a really good book, much more detail here than in the show, and I'd recommend it to anyone who really wants to get into that debate of rights and wrongs. It's got much more analysis than my previous book. My third favourite book is Pax Britannica, The Climax of an Empire by James Morris. Later editions had him Jan Morris, and this is a book that I very, very much enjoy. It's something that I've never really thought about myself if I hadn't come across it. It's the story of how the Empire was perceived by British people and, well, people around the world through art. So, for example, this is the middle of a trilogy. The later one will cover movies such as Lawrence of Arabia and The Man Who Would Be King. This covers books and short stories. It covers Kipling, it covers poetry, it covers theatre. I find this really interesting. It's an artistic study of the British Empire. It's the only book I've ever come across quite like it. It is one of a kind. And it's something that I very much enjoy, and I do find myself flicking through it and also looking to it to get recommendations for fiction about the Empire. Fiction never lies. It's really interesting to see how people perceived the Empire at the time. This is my third favourite book. My fourth favourite book on the British Empire is a genuine doorstopper. Not only is it big, it is a very dense, packed narrative. It's called The Great Game, subtitled The Struggle for Empire in Central Asia by Peter Hopkirk. This is talking about the Raj, British India, as it expands out, the Russian Empire as it expands down, and how they kind of meet in the middle in much of what we now call Afghanistan. Of course, the borders were very, very different. This gets into how some of those borders were really made. But this is the Great Game. It's not just military, it is also a spy game covered, for example, in Rudyard Kipling's Kim. I find this a gripping book, and I read a section of this out in the podcast episode linked below. Again, it is a very, very weighty book, but it's one of those books where the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And I'd recommend it to anyone who wants a window into, well, great power struggle. My fifth favourite book is Empire of the Seas. This is the book How the Navy Forged the Modern World. It's a BBC book. It accompanies a TV documentary. Again, TV documentaries are available, but I often do prefer books. This is quite different from the others in that it's a very, very lush kind of coffee table book. It's very high resolution, filled with pictures. It describes the Royal Navy's role for about the 1500s until the early 1900s of how Britain did rule the waves. And I find it just a really, really good book. It's by Brian Lavery, accompanied the TV show by Dan Snow. And I think it's a fantastic book. It's perfect for any coffee table. So there we go. 5 different books, 5 different types of books that cover different parts of the empire. And these are my top 5 for learning about the British Empire. If you have one that you think is really good, please do comment down below. And if this video encourages you to read any of them, let me know whether you enjoyed them or not. I hope that these entertain, inform, and educate. Thank you very much for watching.